Here's Mick Mulvaney. Again, I don't think that it should be necessary to show a return on Meals on Wheels. But here, let's just hear him just say this.
Aren't exclusively about housing. They support a variety of different programs, including in part Meals on Wheels that affects a lot of Americans. In Austin, Texas today, one organization there that delivers those meals to thousands of elderly says that those citizens will no longer be able to be provided those meals in those communities. So what do you say to those Americans who are ultimately losing out, not on housing, but on other things that are taken out of the budget?
And as you know, I think you know, that Meals on Wheels is not a federal program. It's part of that community, that CDBGs, the block grants that we give to the states. And many states make the decision to use that money on Meals on Wheels. Here's what I can tell you about CDBGs, because that's what we fund, right? Is that we spent $150 billion on those programs since the 1970s. The CDBGs have been identified as programs since, I believe, the second Bush administration, as ones that were just not showing any results. That we can't do that anymore. We can't spend money on programs just because they sound good and great. Meals on Wheels sounds great. Again, that's a state decision to fund that particular portion to it, to take the federal money and give it to the states and say, look, we want to give you money for programs that don't work. I can't defend that anymore. We cannot defend that anymore.
All right. Nice cufflinks, incidentally, that Mulvaney is wearing. So we have this argument
coming out of his shirt. I'm just wondering.
I think that's just a St. Patrick's Day thing. And so, so we have this argument that it's not showing results. Now, we've already talked about how it's the idea that something feeding seniors showing results, just to ask that question seems to be grotesque. But there's a story from Kaiser Health News back in December of last year. Just a couple of things you should know about it. Which it is shown statistically, Brown University of Public Health estimated that if all states not decreased, but increased the number of older people receiving the meals by 1%, they would save more than $100 million, because these studies show that meal deliveries can help elderly people stay out of nursing homes, reduce falls. So we know that something like 2/3 of all people in nursing homes are there on Medicaid. And if you can keep them out of a nursing home at whatever it is, $1,800 a month, probably more, probably $5,000 a month rather, and they can stay at home because they're getting meals, which is, of course, one of the primary things you need. And it's not just that they're getting meals. The meals aren't just left out in front of the door. You have someone coming in every day, and they are checking on what's going on with this person. So, this story in and of itself was just about a guy, Dave Kelly, 75 years old. Kelly lost his sight 2 years ago, reluctantly gave up cooking. And the person who comes in every day, same person, can tell, is Kelly doing all right? Is he losing weight? Is he sick? Is there something going on in the apartment that could indicate some type of a problem? Is there something on the floor that he could trip on that I can move? $7 a day is cheaper than $1,300 a day, said the CEO of this local Meals on Wheels. So there is a lot of evidence actually that you do get results from it. And then I've got this piece from the Free Market Fonzie at Reason. Seniors won't starve if Meals on Wheels loses government grants. This is and this is like a perfect indictment of both conservatism and libertarianism, where there's actually no argument here. It's just like, let me mitigate how this is tugging on that weird emotional thing you have about feeding old people. But does Meals on Wheels rely on government grants to do its good work? So in other words, like, I'm willing to concede it's fine. There are hundreds of Meals on Wheels organizations around the country, so it's hard to generalize. But overwhelmingly, he says, the groups get the majority of revenue from charitable giving, not government funds. In 2015, for instance, the National Meals on Wheels reported that government grants accounted for just 3% of its annual revenues of $7.5 million. Now, that's just the national organization that administers it. So Meals on Wheels for San Diego County in California says that the government grants made up just 1.5% of its revenue of $4.4 million. Not all branches are so independent. Atlanta's group gets 48% of its revenue from government grants, half of it. None of the annual reports I looked at broke down exactly what level of government or specific programs applied the money. The point, as Matt Welsh writes, we have gotten so used to increased government spending on everything that any cut to any program is automatically cast in apocalyptic terms. Okay, no one here is claiming that this is the apocalypse, just that it's disgusting and heartless.
Yep.
And I would extend that to claiming that it's also self-defeating in terms of actually saving money. He writes, in many cities, Meals on Wheels would barely be affected by losing all federal grants. In others, the local citizens and corporations and charities, such as the United Way, which also probably is subject to federal budget cuts too, I would imagine, would need to step in and fill the void. That's hardly the worst possible outcome. Can Atlanta not really feed its poor senior population via philanthropy? And it certainly shouldn't stop Americans from coming to terms with basic fiscal realities. Well, let's put aside his sense of what basic fiscal realities are, because I would argue it's a bunch of bull. But to simply pose the question in a sort of a snarky way in no way proves the point that Atlanta could fill the void of 50% funding to pay for seniors. In fact, the Meals on Wheels network is already serving 23 million fewer meals now than it was in 2005. And waiting lists are mounting in every single state. Every single state. So if there was just all this like philanthropic money floating around out there, all this charitable money that was just floating around out there, boy, these Meals on Wheels people are just sort of letting it pass them by. The program actually provides 35% of the total funding for Meals on Wheels nationally. But instead of cutting this program, we should be expanding it, because the number of seniors that we have is growing. The baby boom is like right on the cusp of being the most likely candidates for this program. One which keeps people out of nursing homes, which is both humane and, just coincidentally, and really shouldn't be the litmus test, also beneficial in terms of cost efficiency. I mean, it's appalling.
In addition to how sickening and disgusting it is, it just occurs to me when I looked at this too, and as you're talking about it, that all of the jokes that are so fun when people call in and talk about rocket, or jetpacks and whatever, like, this is, though, again, like that real first of all, it shows that there's no distinction between a professional writer promoting libertarianism and some random phone caller. It's all crackpottery. And that there's real implications if a major part of your policy analysis is simply your sense that your fantasy life will come true.
Charity will make up for it.
That's an actual argument that they deploy all the time.
Of course. And there is absolutely zero basis for that argument, both historically and in present day. You don't think Meals on Wheels would be expanded if all this charitable money was just sitting on the sidelines waiting for this? Give me a break.
Well, or even just, I remember every time I've ever had a conversation with somebody, they go, oh, things are so much better before the government did this stuff. People used to give directly to people. It's like, well, why did this stuff get created? How did that need get created?
Government wanted to take over,
yep.
man.
Then you get into protocols of Elders of Zion type stuff.
Hey, everybody. Sam Seder here.
Donald Trump is a bad guy. Believe me. It's true.
It is true. And you can subscribe to this channel by subscribing to this channel. It's true.